You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Greetings, beautiful people. My name is Simon Javan Okello, and I'm excited to be here for another amazing episode of the African Father in America podcast. We are live and direct in Seattle, Washington, and I have a really special guest with me here today. I'm just going to bring him on your screen in a second here. I have Chris Conti. Chris, go ahead and say hello to our viewers and our listeners.
Well, hello, and thank you, Simon, for having me. It's a real honor to be with you and on this august forum.
Wonderful. Yes, it's definitely a privilege to have you. I am going to do a proper introduction to you, and I'm going to also discuss why we are having you on the show today. I've always wanted to have you on the show, but today is very, very special. But for now, we are going to just share today's proverb real quick, and after we've talked about the proverb and the 3 nuggets of wisdom, I'll do a proper introduction of Chris, and then we'll talk a lot about an incredible book that was just published recently that Chris edited. So if you're just joining us, thank you. I deeply appreciate your presence, and I'm going to bring on the proverb for today here on your screen. It says that the rat cannot call the cat to account. This is a Nigerian proverb, Niger. So I have 3 nuggets of wisdom. I'm going to share about this wonderful proverb, but I want you to share in the comment what this proverb means to you. I know that you are all joining us from different platforms. Some of you are joining us on YouTube, where I want you to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. But I know that some of you are also on LinkedIn, some of you are on X, formerly Twitter, some of you are on Facebook, some of you are on AMP. I just want you to take a minute, engage with this content, share and comment. The 3 nuggets of wisdom related to this proverb. The first one says that just as the rat cannot challenge the cat, understanding our limitations is essential. Then the second nugget of wisdom says that much like the rat's inability to confront the cat, not every conflict is worth engaging in. You should choose your fights wisely. And then the final nugget of wisdom is that, today's proverb highlights the natural order of things, and it reminds us of the importance of respecting authority and roles, So let those sink in, think about those for a while. And I want to bring on our guest here for a moment. Chris, when we sent you this proverb from Niger, what is it that came to your mind?
Well, I'll be honest with you, not very much at first. I didn't know what to make of it. And actually, the 3 nuggets that you've just shared are quite different than what I imagined. Not being an African, and certainly I know nothing about Niger. I've never been there. I don't know. I've met one person from Niger, and we met for maybe a minute, and that's about it. So in a sense, I found myself in the position I'm often in as an editor, and especially when I'm editing African writers, which is, I don't know the subject, they're the experts. So my gut feeling was to, I actually thought of the rat as bad, and that to me, the rat did not have the moral authority to be in judgment of the cat. And maybe that's a very Western way of perceiving things. It sounds like it is, since your wisdom, which is much closer to the reality than mine, is quite different. But it reminds me of an object lesson that I've used many times as an editor, which is my job is to help people tell their stories. But I am not the owner of their stories, and I don't tell their stories myself. So it illustrates my inadequacies.
Well, the beautiful thing with African proverbs is that all the answers are correct. Every part, it's about perspectives. When you see or hear these proverbs, they're to teach you a lesson, not to teach others a lesson. You take it and digest it for your own sake. And so I just love your own perspectives on this proverb. But for those who are meeting Chris Conti for the first time, he is an incredible writer, editor, and journalism teacher based in Washington, D.C., and also a former reporter and editor for the Wall Street Journal. And Chris, one of the people that I talked to in preparation to our conversation today was Dr. John Conti, and I was asking him, hey, John, what question should I ask Chris? And one of his suggestions was ask him why Africa. Why, of all the places you've been to, India, you've worked for the World Bank. Why Africa? What is it about Africa that made you feel that you need to work on this project that we are going to be discussing today? Let me just bring it on the screen here real quick so that everybody who is watching can also familiarize themselves with Remembering the Future, which is the book that Chris just edited with an amazing group of authors, and journalists from Uganda. So Chris, speak about why Africa for a moment as I bring this picture to the screen.
Okay, well, I in the course of my journalism career, I've traveled to very many different places, and in the early part of the 2000s, I found myself with in a 3-year assignment to Uganda, and I have never had a more immediately and enduringly happy experience, I think, in any other place I've worked. I found that Ugandans are very welcoming, very loving, very supportive, very interested. And they also, and as a journalist, I particularly appreciated this, they are natural storytellers. And in my casual conversations, almost from the day I landed, I would ask people a question and they would give me a whole story that would explain the background and the cultural context. And I found the story absolutely fascinating. So actually, while I was there, I worked with a group of writers who happened to all be women. And that produced a book called Crossroads, Women Coming of Age in Today's Uganda. And they were all women writers talking about their experience as Ugandan women who were very modern and westernized, really, in their outlook, and reconciling that with what they thought were the teachings of their traditional culture. And it was a very happy experience. But I got all kinds of feedback from other writers, including men, saying, "Why didn't you include us?" To which I had no good answer. But also, people said there are deeper stories that you have to tell. And one of the things that became clear to me is that many young Ugandans are really feel themselves still to borrow a phrase from the first book, at a crossroads, and they are under enormous pressure. They have been, first of all, by their colonial rulers for the first half of the 20th century. But then immediately after colonialism ended, the World Bank and the U.S. government and all kinds of outsiders were pressing upon them rules about how a nation should behave and what should be the structure of a nation. And a lot of my Ugandan friends said that this didn't seem to relate with what they heard from their elders, but they also felt cut off from their past because they had really been taught the Bible of Western economics and Western values for so long that they felt out of touch. So the idea behind this book was for them to go back, to delve back into the past and to understand their African past, with the goal that then they could understand how they got to where they are today, who they are today, and only then can they think for themselves about what kind of future they want. And that's really why we have the title Remembering the Future. It sounds like a contradiction, but in fact, by remembering, they are building a future. And as you'll see, there are 15 chapters in the book, and they have many different takes about all kinds of different aspects of their African lives. But they're all fascinating, and I find very appealing. And as a Westerner, as an outsider, I feel that the stories they tell about the values that they inherited from their culture are lessons for everybody. And I think that you could very easily turn this book into a loving, friendly critique of Western culture, which I think is very much needed today.
I love that. I love that. And actually, it brings me to this very first question that I ask all the guests that join me here for the African Father in America podcast, AFIA podcast. I normally ask this question because this question is really like the book you're talking about, Chris. You know, this question is to ask guests to think about a story that happened in their childhood when they were 8 years old, that inspires who they are today. You know, so I want you to think about a moment in your childhood that drives this effort. You know, this, you've worked really hard on this project. I think for at least the last 3 years, I've known that you're working on this book. And so, for me, it's really important that we go back a little bit to also your own upbringing, you know, and how that inspires the work that you're doing today with this book. Before you do that, though, I just want to encourage, I see a lot of people are joining us on YouTube. I want you to take a moment and comment down below. What is it that you're hearing about this conversation that is moving you? You know, I want to see you engaging. Let us know where in the world you are also. If you're in Uganda, Kenya, the US, let us know where in the world you're joining us from, and I'll read your comment before the end of the show. So go ahead, Chris, and share with us, you know, what is it that happened in your childhood that continues to drive who you are in the work that you're doing today?
Well, I grew up in a family with very idealistic parents, and my mother always was sharing with her children idealistic stories about her past and about our country. And really, my very first memories of the broader society outside of my own immediate world was the election of President John F. Kennedy in 1960. And he was to me, and partly I think I was seeing him through my parents' eyes, he was a heroic figure. He was young, he was dynamic, he had a wonderful sense of humor, but also very strong ideals, which he was very eloquent in espousing. And I think that he gave me a sense from an early age of great optimism and great belief in democracy and the American democratic system, not just the American democratic system, and democracy in general. And since you talked to Dr. John Conti, and I'm relieved to hear that he didn't tell you any of the dark stories from our shared past as children. We were brothers. But I will tell you one personal story. One day we were playing softball in our backyard, and my father pitched the ball, and brother John hit a vicious, hard hit line drive that hit my father square in the face. and there was a lot of blood. The baseball game was over. I think the nose was broken, although I'm not sure. But I was so full of that experience, and I wanted to know, what can I do with it? And the only thing I could think of to do was to tell the story. So I created my first newspaper with me doing the graphics, which were about what you would expect of a 10-year-old. But I told the story about this horrible baseball accident, and the bug really caught on with me, because I've just always wanted to be the purveyor of stories, and I have been a journalist through high school, some in college, and then from college to this day. That has been my life's work.
That's so incredible. That's so incredible. I love stories, and I love your journey, and really I thank you for sharing your gifts with Africa, so when you look back at this story at the beginning, and you go back to your career, with the World Bank, with Wall Street Journal, I also knew that you teach journalism in India, and I think when we first met, you were teaching journalism in Uganda, and maybe you are working on your first book, or you had just published it. But when you think about all of that, do you think that Remembering the Future, the book that you just published, is what makes you most proud, or is there something else in your career that you want to highlight, so that we can just learn a little more about what is it that when you look back, let's say you go back to Uganda, and, you meet a bunch of students at Makerere University that are very interested in the book, but they're also interested in what is it that makes you most proud about this work that you do. Would you present this book, or would you talk about something else?
I actually think I would present this book. I think in a way it's the culmination of a long learning experience that I have gone through. And it started, as many journalists' careers do, with covering politics, and I covered it at the grassroots level. I covered, a small city. I covered a small state. And then, as many journalists want to do, I made my way to the big story, which was Washington, D.C., and I covered the national government of the U.S. Congress, for quite a few years, and then I wanted to even be in a bigger arena, so I started doing a lot of work internationally. But as I've gotten older, one of the things that I've come to appreciate is the biggest story and the biggest mystery, the biggest puzzle to be solved, really, is what goes on in the heart and the minds of individual people. And I think what drew me to Africa was that the Africans who I met, did not come to me with great preconceptions, but they came with great interest, curiosity, and desire to learn. And I really felt, Uganda is a very new country. It's only been a country since 1962. It's a very young country. I can't remember the percentage, but I am way beyond the average life expectancy for a Ugandan. And more than half of the population is younger. Are people younger than my own children, and that youth is evident in the yearning and the desire and the sense of openness to what the future may bring. And I think that what I found so rewarding about working with these writers was that they are very thoughtful, they're very learned, but they also ask the basic questions about who are we and what are we trying to do, what are we trying to get out of our lives, and how do you live a good life? And, in a sense, as I've watched some of the things go wrong in other spheres that I've covered, especially politics, I think the problem is partly that we've lost that human touch. Certainly in the U.S. we have. And I think that the voice of youth and of people with a very different background, and a background that happens to be full of teachings of elders who had great wisdom, is something that there's nothing better and more valuable that I could share or help my authors share with the world. So why Africa? Because it's a hell of an interesting place with a lot going on, and a very exciting and inspiring place. And I was lucky to find myself in the right place at the right time.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. Those are really beautiful, responses and just stories. You're a wonderful storyteller. I just want to thank all our viewers. I see you, but I don't see your comments yet. Oh, there are so many comments here. I'm going to read them in a moment. Please keep sharing them. And Chris, I just want you to take a moment and pick your favorite excerpt from the book, but also show us the cover of the book. I have a copy of the book myself. There you go. I love the cover of the book. Yeah, nice. So I would love for you to just read maybe a paragraph from your favorite excerpt, or not just your favorite, but the section of the book that you'd like to share with our viewers and our listeners today. I would love that.
Well, that's actually a very hard assignment, because the chapters are very diverse. They talk about everything from spirituality to health to modern movies to language. One of the most interesting stories, which is a real study in culture and how culture evolves, deals with the more than 30 languages that coexist in that little nation in East Africa. So it's hard to find a sample. And also the stories, some of them are very sad. There's some tragedy. Some of them are funny, and everything between. But I don't know that this is my favorite, but I actually thought that a chapter that's actually this is actually the end of the book. And in some cases, it's a mistake to start with the ending, but in this case, I think it's appropriate, because it really describes the optimism and hope that comes out after all of the discussion about difficult issues and hardships. It's a chapter by the writer Edna Namara, who your viewers are going to meet in a few days. And the chapter that she writes talks about her experiences being raised largely by her grandmother. And this is how she ends the story. It's a little longer than a paragraph, but I'll try to go fast. My grandmother, who had guided me through many of life's most important moments, concluded her responsibility by easing her release from me. She helped me understand and accept her own death. A few weeks after she had been in the hospital, she came to me in a dream. She was close to me, near enough for us to exchange words. We were separated by a bright gold ray. She was strong, she was dancing and happy. She told me she was feeling rejuvenated. Please tell your siblings not to care anymore about how I feel. I am happy, she said. This made me happy too. I kept looking at her. I had never seen her with such a glow. I had never seen her so strong. Our conversation went on to one other sentence. Look, the nurses have moved me off the bed, she said. Really, Grandma, this is so good, I answered. A phone call cut short my dream. My cousin George, who had been taking care of her, was on the line. Edna, he said, grandmother has breathed her last. What did you say, George? What? I asked, throwing back my covers. That was Edna speaking. The brother responds, grandmother died a moment ago. Her nurses are removing her from the bed right now. I wanted to return to the dream, but I could not. I wanted to ask more questions, but what for? What was important was her message. She was happy and she wished us all to be happy. She gave me the means to let her go because she knew it would be hard for me. My grandmother, who introduced me to a culture of humans, also gave me a sneak peek into the culture of life after death. There is a rebirth, a rekindling, a rebranding, a perfect bliss in the spirit world after our mission on earth is accomplished. Rest in peace, my best friend, Grandma.
That's beautiful and sad and moving at the same time. I can't really wait to meet Edna this Friday. I believe I'm interviewing her this Friday, and I'll have to bring this up, and I'll see what her favorite excerpt is, from the book as well.
I should just say she wrote a whole other chapter on a completely different issue. Like a lot of the other writers, she traveled back to her native home, and she hiked high up into a mountain to talk to a great aunt who told her about the sad, sad song that women used to sing on their wedding days in hill country. And she finds the story behind the dream. Behind the song. And it's also inspiring, and it's not what you would expect. It's a wonderful story.
I love that. So, Chris, our viewers would like to know where they can get the book. Share with us, some of the places. If somebody is in Uganda, where can they go to get the book? If someone is here in the US, where can they go to get the book? And where can they learn more if they just want to learn more about the authors and things like that?
Sure. If you are in Africa, especially Uganda, but other parts of Africa, the best place to go is the African publisher, and that's Ibua Publishing. And their website is www.ibua Publishing. That's IBUA Publishing, all one word, .com. And from there you can find out how to order the book through Ibua. If you're outside of Africa, or if you happen to be an Amazon user, you can find it on Amazon, and you also can get a wealth of information about the book, all the other chapters, information about the authors at the book's website. And that is www.ugandamemories, all one word, ugandamemories.com. So with those two websites, you'll be connected to the book easily.
Excellent. There are so many, so many of you, my viewers and listeners and friends, and I see that some of the authors are also watching the show. So thank you for taking the time. Chris, we are coming to the tail end of our conversation today, and I just want you to share anything that I did not ask you that you really feel that you'd like everybody to hear, and then from there we will wrap up our conversation for today.
Well, I have in front of me a list of the 15 authors, and I was going to walk you through a description of all of the fascinating chapters, because there really are. Every chapter is, I think, full of surprises and full of ideas and thoughts that might not have occurred to you, but also are fascinating and also inspiring. And to me, they're really. I was the editor, but in a way, I feel like I was the student, and I had the privilege of knowing all of these people and getting to know them quite well. The editing process was long and arduous, and they really rolled up their sleeves and worked hard. And I'm really proud of the results, and I really feel that it will stand the test of time. But also, it's inspired some interesting discussion already in Uganda, and there is going to be some new news in the days ahead about unexpected things that have happened as a result of this book. And stay tuned. We'll be letting you know about that as soon as we can.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. You know, Uganda is a special place for me. I've been there a few times. Next month, we have a Ugandan chef making, fantastic food for us at the Taste of Madaraka Festival here in Seattle, Washington. And, I just commend you, Chris, for taking your time and doing this incredible work with African authors, especially from Uganda. I feel that a lot of Africans need this opportunity. We need similar stories from Kenya, similar stories from Malawi, similar stories from Nigeria. So I just commend you, and I'm very, very proud of all the authors. I can't wait to interview all of them as well. I know that we have a series of interviews around Remembering the Future, this book. And if you're watching, I want you to make sure you grab a copy, go to Amazon or go to Ibua Publishers in Uganda and get yourself a copy. So Chris, I just, as we wrap up our time together, I just want to thank you again. And let me just see who left comments here. I see we have Steven joining us from Kenya, who says hello, great family. And I also see my wonderful sister here is saying Western society is what needs to be critiqued. And she says that Chris Conte, the truth that always rings, that's wonderful. And then, I also see Joseph Owen, who is saying great job. So those are the comments I could read for today. I just want to thank you all for joining us, and I will be here tomorrow again, 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, for another episode of the African Father in America podcast. Take great care of yourself. Chris, thank you so much for making the time. I deeply appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and blessings to all of your listeners.
African Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington.